Many of us have had the experience of a difficult divorce. The disappointment of a marriage entered into with optimism and hope that turns into something very different. Many people take years to recover from the trauma. My guest today, Susan Pava, took a different path. She used her divorce experience to go back to school and become a licensed marriage and family therapist, specializing in divorce and relationship recovery. She has both practical advice as well as a message of renewal that every person ending a difficult relationship needs to hear. Susan, welcome to the latest version. I'm so glad you're here with us today.
Thank you, Betsy. Thank you so much for having me today.
Where you started out is very different from where you are now, and I think a lot of us have these stories of coming out of college and going into a field where you thought you would, stay for a while. You had an interesting early career in advertising. Can you tell me about that?
Yes. After I left college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wasn't ready to work. So I went to Syracuse University, the Newhouse School, and got a master's in telecommunications and film, and then found myself in New York City, first working for MTV as a production assistant, and then landing my first job in advertising.
You had some really national or international level clients. It was kind of the end of the Mad Men era, if I can put it that way. Can you describe what that was, what that time was like for you?
Sure. I probably came in after the Mad Men era, but there was still the culture was somewhat still there. I was fortunate enough to get my first job in the oldest advertising agency in the country, and I was fortunate enough to work on accounts like AT&T, the Reach Out and Touch Someone, De Beers Diamonds, Avon, many 7-Up, or big products. So they had the budgets, and it was loads of fun. I learned a lot, and it was kind of an interesting culture to be involved in.
Yeah, it sounds very heady and exciting. I had that sort of experience myself right out of college when I was kind of in the broadcasting world behind the scenes in New York. You also met your first husband in those years. Am I correct? Right?
Yes. We worked on an AT&T commercial sponsoring the Live Aid concert years and years ago. He was the art director and I was the producer. And that was how it started. We are still terrific friends to this day. We have one daughter together who's remarkable. And we seem to have done everything right.
So you had an experience where a relationship ended, but there was a friendship or at least an amicability between the two of you that kind of maybe made you think that it was always what it was going to be like if you had to go through, say, a second divorce.
Yes. I mean, I knew in the back of my mind that most people, it's hard to be amicable, but we were young. We had a small baby, essentially, and we had a long time to navigate together. And I think both of us decided we were going to do it, I hate to say properly, but the easy way. We weren't going to argue with one another. We weren't going to fight with one another. Our main focus was going to be our daughter. And that's what it was. And she has thrived because of it.
Many women, when they give up careers to marry, stay home with the kids, which many of us love doing, by the way, I was one of those. What happens to women when they do that? They're giving up an an income stream, an ability to be independent. They're putting their trust in their partner to uphold their end of the bargain of what's happening here. Kind of explain what that whole thing is about.
I think it's a difficult choice for women. Our culture, at least up till now, has said that the mother stays home or works and raises the children. When you choose to stay home, you take yourself out of a community of peers. And if you're someone like me who really wasn't that interested in having lunch dates and talking about teachers and diapers and that kind of stuff, it grows old very quickly. And you sort of miss the camaraderie of your peers. You miss the validation of your peers. Now, if you're married to somebody where it's a team effort, all is well. But when you're married to somebody who sees you strictly as a housewife and mother, that causes lots of problems, unless that's who you really want to be. That was not me.
Explain how it was that you entered into the second relationship. Did you have specific goals in mind? Was it, true love, or was there something else that you were looking for?
I've done a lot of soul searching about this, and I've come to the conclusion that I really, really wanted more children, and I was willing to dance with the devil, as they say, to get them. I wouldn't really advise that to too many people because I landed in a heap of trouble with that attitude.
When did you feel things were going off track?
Well, honestly, and I hate to admit this, but I knew in the very beginning it just wasn't right. But I didn't know what right was in a marriage. But, we all have a gut instinct. And I knew early on something was just not right. But I had a goal in mind, which was to have more children. And I had blinders on to everything else.
When did you feel that divorce was going to be the only solution to this problem?
I knew early on that this probably wasn't going to last, but I worked so hard and did my best. But when I realized that it was just me putting in the effort and that the person I was married to was not changing at all and had no interest in changing or even meeting me halfway, I realized that I could spend the rest of my life in a situation like this, or I could cut my losses and move on. So that's what I decided to do.
When did you make the decision to become a licensed family therapist? And that sounds like a lot of training involved. What was that process like, and how did your thinking evolve on that?
I have kind of a funny answer for that. When I was about 18 years old, my mother told me I should be a social worker. And I poo-pooed her. I had just worked for the district attorney over the summer as a summer job. And the whole thing was not in the cards for me. Then I was in advertising and I was growing restless. So I took some social work classes, but didn't finish it as I had a child I had to support. And then when my marriage went off the rails and was such a difficult, litigious, scorched earth divorce, I decided that I needed to help other people because I knew what they needed and I knew there was nobody out there who could help me. So I was just going to have to go it on my own and hopefully learn what I needed to and help others.
So when you were going through this, you really felt like the people who were that there wasn't the type of help out there that could assist someone in the position that you were in, dealing with the type of person you were dealing with.
Yes. I was married to somebody with a personality disorder. So it wasn't your normal it wasn't your normal divorce. Everything that one would expect didn't happen. Everything that one wouldn't expect did happen. Everything that you would expect didn't, or vice versa. So I had things coming at me from every direction. I didn't know what end was up. And there wasn't a single person out there who got it, who really could sit with me. I mean, I went to a therapist, but they weren't, and she was wonderful, but they weren't accustomed to somebody bringing in the problem that I had. And so I had to figure it out on my own. And surprisingly enough, when we're put in a position where we have to be resilient, it's amazing what we can find.
What is the training involved in becoming a licensed family and marriage counselor, therapist?
I spent 3 years in a classroom and 2 years post doing internships. And then additionally, since I was trained as a marriage and family therapist, which is more a systemic look at therapy, I also learned all the behavioral types of therapy like CBT, REBT, ACT, so that I could really deal with people's emotional issues, their dysregulation, the impulsivity, the anxiety, the depression, the PTSD, all those things that get triggered when we're going through a divorce. So I sort of learned what I needed to know then, and now use it in the present and moving forward in the future to help others.
So you feel that you've had I wouldn't say a unique experience, but very particular type of experience that you can use to help other people going through the same kind of process.
Yes. And what's remarkable is there are more people out there who are dealing with divorces like mine than you might ever believe. And in fact, I met a woman in a program that I attended last week, and she's basically my twin from another mother. Wow. She has had the exact same experience and the same triggers from growing up that led her into a marriage with a narcissist, or worse, sounds like, in her situation. A lot of us are out there, and a lot of us don't know what to do. Do we stay? Do we go? Are we miserable? And I realized we get one life to live, and don't give it away so fast.
I would imagine there is a power dynamic at work that must be, frankly, terrifying if you're a woman who's been home, who doesn't have an ability to support herself and her children. That power dynamic, which is always in the hands of the other partner, must be very damaging to a lot of people.
It is very damaging because it attacks your sense of who you are and how could I have been so wrong? And so there's a lot of self-denigration, and there's a lot of questioning. How could I have done this? Or I shouldn't have done this. We can't, hindsight is 20/20, but you can't look at the decision you made 20 years later based on what you know now versus what you knew 20 years ago. You made it knowing with the information you had at the time. So you can't beat yourself up later in life to say, oh, I should have, I could have. Well, maybe, but maybe not. So it's all about healing. We tend to beat ourselves up when we make mistakes. And we're all human and we're all fallible and we all make mistakes, big ones and little ones.
You were telling me about an experience you've had recently going to taking part in a memoir writing workshop, and you found it very liberating or exciting to be a part of. Can you tell me a bit about that?
I did a memoir writing course called From the Heart up at the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York, which is a spiritual center. There were 34 of us, mostly women, but a few men. And I don't know how to explain it other than saying it was the most extraordinary experience. We came from all walks of life, but we all had a story. And the woman who taught the course made it so warm and comfortable and safe for us to share that I think some of us looked at ourselves and couldn't believe we were actually doing this in front of 34 strangers. You don't have to be a writer. I am, but there were plenty of people who aren't writers, yet they have a story to tell. And it was liberating, really liberating. And you felt held by everybody. The tears were flowing, the hugs, these were strangers. And at the end of 5 days, we feel like we know each other so well. And I can't recommend doing something like that. It doesn't have to be that, but just to get a better understanding of yourself.
Yeah,
and to learn to love yourself again.
Memoir writing workshops are so interesting. And if my listener who is not in the New York area is interested, there are writing workshops in all sorts of spaces, community colleges, some libraries, adult education programs often have memoir writing workshops.
You can do many of them online. If you go to Masterclass,
okay.
This woman that I met, she teaches a course on Masterclass called Story Alchemy. And essentially she shows you a way to somewhat change the narrative that you've written for yourself and turn it into a narrative of self-love as opposed to a narrative of how could I have done this? And so there are a lot of them. There's a place called Kripalu also. I think it's outside of Albany area. Perhaps.
Yeah, I think it's in the Berkshires. Yes.
The Berkshires, right. So there are a number of places for people to go to do this kind of thing, if not online. Everything is online now.
Right. Do you think you would recommend this to people who are going through difficult relationships to think about a memoir writing process to maybe get it to the bottom of what happened or whatever?
Whether you want to write your own memoir or you just want to journal your thoughts, it's helpful. And while you're journaling, you want to add a piece of gratitude. You want to write what you're grateful for. And if you can do that at the end of every day before you go to sleep, neuroscience has shown us that within a matter of days or weeks, you will wake up the next morning in a better frame of mind, more able to greet the day. So writing is a way for us to process our emotions. And a lot of us don't process them at all, which is why we end up either feeling depressed or anxious or any number of things.
I'm sorry, let's say that again. Write down in a journal before you go to bed
3 things that you're grateful for. And they don't have to be, huge things. They could be, I'm grateful the train wasn't late today. I'm grateful I got out of work early. I'm grateful my child ate their entire meal. Little things add up to a whole lot when it comes to that. And the same holds true for when you look at your day at the end of the day. Don't look back on what went wrong. That's easy to do, but look back on what went well. That too will set you up to wake up the next morning in a better frame of mind.
That's some great advice. And I think that's something everyone can do, whatever the state of your current relationship. It sounds like a very, very healthy thing to do.
Yes.
In the end, you've talked about going through this terrible divorce, becoming and coming out at the other end with a new career and a new identity. In the end, you really have a hopeful message for people who are facing having to go through all of this.
I guess I believe wholeheartedly in making lemonade from lemons. I took my experience and I worked it in such a way that I can use it now to help others. And by doing that, I continue to heal each and every day. I would love to read a quote from a book called Broken Open by Elizabeth Lesser, who actually is the founder of the Omega Institute.
Oh.
And this book changed my life, basically. When I was at the bottom, not knowing where I was going or what to do, I read this book and it spoke volumes to me. So if I could read this one quote,
of course,
I would love to. I have noticed that the most generous and vital people are those who have been broken open by change or loss or adversity, and not just broken open on the outside. Indeed, it is the internal transformation that matters most. If there is one thing that has made a difference in my life, it is the courage to turn and face what wants to change within me. And that's just one of the pearls in her book. But essentially, she's saying what we know about everything in life. You have a choice. You can choose to stay miserable and unhappy and broken down. Or you can say, I have this one life. I have these values. I have these goals. I'm going to behave in a manner that's going to get me to those goals, and I'm going to be broken open. I'm not going to be defeated. I'm going to let this lesson teach me and let the pain teach me what matters most in life.
So someone needn't look at entering into what's going to be this kind of traumatic process and think, oh, I've ruined everything. I'll never be the same. I'll never recover from this. You have a much more positive message.
You don't have to do any of that. And granted, it is hard. It's a hard task, but if you can keep the end goal, and that is to fly, to figure out who you are and live that life that you so desperately want, because you can. It's just a decision to make.
Susan, I always end my conversations with asking my guests for 3 pieces of advice. And this has been full of great advice. I always ask my guests for 3 pieces of advice, but I'm wondering if you have some important tips for women who are thinking of divorce in the very early stages.
I have some tips that will help you in your everyday life, like before you announce that you want a divorce, women need to open their own checking account, get their own credit card, organize yourself by getting papers of anything you might need, like bank statements, property deeds, all those things. But on the spiritual and emotional side, I think you have to accept that this is one of the most difficult things you may ever go through in life. But that doesn't mean that you can't do it. You will surprise yourself with how much resilience you have, and that you're not alone. You are not the only one living this story, and you will get through it. just put those blinders on and look forward. Don't keep looking back. What did I do wrong? What should I have done? That time is over. You're living in the present and looking forward. So it doesn't matter what happened in the past. Just exist today and see where it takes you.
What about the team of people you should have around you?
Yes, I left that out, and that is extremely important. Make sure that you have a team that you feel safe, who isn't questioning you, who isn't saying, did that really happen? Oh, that doesn't sound right. You want somebody who has your back, who's not negotiating with another lawyer so that they can get a better deal on another case they may have together. You want somebody who's going to, if they can't take your phone calls right away, they either will get back to you or they will send you an email. But more importantly, instead of relying on, instead of counting on your lawyer, find yourself a therapist, not your best friend, because they're going to tell you what you want to hear. But find a therapist who can help safeguard the process for you.
Any other words of wisdom before we say goodbye? You're just a font of knowledge on a topic that's difficult for many people to talk about and contemplate.
I guess what I realized most is that you'll find during this time that you grow in ways you never thought possible. There are so many unexpected gifts that you get that, for me at least, I look at before the divorce and after the divorce, and I can remember saying to myself that God or whomever is up there must have some really unbelievably amazing things for me to put me through this real test of endurance. And I can't begin to tell you how karma has been paid back time and time again, from getting the job that I wanted, from meeting the right people, to things just appearing when I needed them most. It is astounding. So my last words, I suppose, are make sure you open your heart. Don't close yourself off, because change is coming. Change is difficult. Change is exhausting, but you can do it, and you will be so happy and proud of yourself when you do.
That's a wonderful, hopeful message to end on. Susan Pava, thank you so much for being my guest today on the latest version, and all the best to you. And I am jealous of your patients, because I know they're getting wonderful advice, because you have just such a warm and positive message, but clear-eyed as well.
Thank you so much, Betsy, for having me and allowing me to share my story with everybody.
Okay. Thanks again. Bye.
Bye.